The internet is an open letter, and it is death. A letter from our own graves. It begs us to share, to connect, to swipe, and to see. Amazing. We can go anywhere. We can be anything. And the dream is Kubla Khan. But the demands of our digital existence reflect a fear of being deleted. The battery of our machines is running out, as we will. That fear is death, and the same metaphor as COVID, it is a plague pit of poison. Or is it an opportunity for a new spring to rise? At the beginning of lockdown, I was grateful to have all the experience of other times. I've flourished, and today, sitting behind my rose-tinted Gucci glasses at my age desk in London, freedom verges exhausted as the workers who are threatened with becoming extinct themselves. The workers have not stopped against a virus that cannot be seen. We are in the most innocuous of wars, where the shape-shifting, ruling elites blame shifting in a chaos matrix of their own design. And outside, the digital simulacrum demands me to negotiate the end of nighness of 340 elephants mysteriously falling dead flat on their old skin faces in Botswana. And they are the echo to the hi-hats of the 250,000 koalas dropping like burgers from skeleton trees in Australia. And the most ancient of ecosystems are being destroyed by flame-faced pudding profiteers who can only think in terms of property as profit. As Dr. Hunter S. Thompson said in The Downward Spiral to Dumbness, there is no such thing as paranoia. Your worst fears can come true at any moment. I feel Europe floating further away as our incompetent malmanagers of Parliament steer us into a no-future Brexit. And this distancing is as real as the small strip of sky behind me, matching the unimaginative grey suits here in stateside who barter between 3 million Hong Kong immigrants as a better proposition to enlist to this work of fiefdom than those in Calais. Those who are seeking shelter from those malmanagers' sales of bombs and proxy wars. 24 million people are starving in Yemen. Saudi gets blamed. We sell them planes. I float in a digital bardo, sharing my data with great behemoths who ultimately control a cycle of oppression and control inflicted by boardrooms that pray to an invisible god of profit. It's like we're waiting in the green room of a funeral parlour. When I go out there, I'm told I must be active. So I sit on my hamster wheel phone in a metasphere gym of populism, thoughts getting ever more celebrated in mediocrity within a war zone of ego pitted against one another, evolving into wokester angles, reframing this privilege of life beneath an unnerving beyond. I am chiseling my epitaph with every status update. Sure, me and you, we're more complex and virtue signaling our lives away, keeping it real in the unreal, because we know the greatest political distraction is individualization. Through our gurus and avocado realness, we are tuned in enough to recognize the banal lack of meaning is a daft postmodern fight. The internet, it doesn't exist. Put your stupid phone away. You're magnetizing the futility of this gift of breathing by presenting yourself in the nowness of savvy pop culture referencing. Right? You and I both know infantilization of the past being presented as something we are now better at is patronizing at all levels. To believe now is superior to then is too basic, because we are progress and we will get through this. Nostalgia is for losers, and our complicity in this most invisible struggle where there are a few facts is to be a part of it. And we know it's not real, but to pervert from within, the only task is to avoid getting triggered into an ever-increasing industrial universe where boundaries only exist for the powerless. And you and me, none of us, we're not powerless, are we? I ask myself, why do I continue to water the fascist machine? The fruits, they are sour. Anxiety swirls within cold echo chambers of atomized tribes, all steered under a one false move and you are dead. Orwellian policing of cancel culture. Just share the process, not the product, y'all. Do as TikTok does. Imitate. Don't agitate. Imitate. Don't agitate. We see everything and it sees us. The private is the public. Hold back. Give out. Yeah. Julian Assange is allowed to rot in the transparent world. Our data is sold back packaged via marketing squads, and I'm drifting in a neon wave towards automation, knowing the virus does exist and everything is cloaked in mass denial. But I cannot be heard shouting through this mask. Darwinism denies its identity of being capitalism as herd immunity. But you and I, we will outrun this. We live with the promise of singularity. The road out of here is littered with pornographic signs of success, entertainment optics dictating populism. And we know they're false flags, man. I feel like a prepper planting my thoughts under the wild mantle of hyper-normalization, never off-grid enough, as the stage disappears into forgettable live streams, appointments that I forget, Zooms, replacing IRL gigs with every update being newer and shinier, cashing in on past caches, cash. Oh wow, what is that? Was that cash or computer cash? Retaining, giving back. Are you getting cash back? Are we spending or saving? That's so deep. It's reframed into some fresh, exciting vernacular for the curious. I am curious. I want to get involved and not fall anywhere near obsolescence, because it's so mediocre to let one's ego dictate one's fate. And it's so common to keep on sharing like the world demands it. So bored. So bored of chasing technology, I pick up a book that was sent to me about the social currency of outrage. Windows of South London sing with rainbows and Black Lives Matter billboards, and I think of the Thursday night I cried in joy, walking up Denmark Hill, the whole estate banging pans. It was the closest I'd felt to unity since a rave, when they took the sound systems away. Or more recently, it felt like performing. And I'm reading about intersectional shifting outrage having less value than the focus of the suffragettes or MLK. It reads, Outraged doesn't sit on its sofa complaining about Kim Kardashian's culturally appropriated braids. So I pick up my phone, go into the social media battlefront. I want to see those braids. Get distracted and scribe something abstract in the war zone of scrolling. It takes a while. I delete it all, having lost half an hour of focused thought in my own world for the one that I feel duty-bound to engage with outside, because I am lucky to have a voice. But I am so distracted. Gossip dilutes demands, and the strobing bells demand tabloid or reality TV distraction from the planet being on fire. Propaganda comes in the shape of a carnival choice of opioids. Dope me up like a neo-Marxist. Sometimes it gets too much in lockdown, and the 9-to-5 trolls who make everything political in the most parliamentary sense. They chip away at my walls, and I'm wallless. I have no shelter. I'm exposed against the river of rhetoric swollen, feeling I must participate with a bank that keeps a printing for theatre board directors telling me that culture is the crown jewels. I know better than to expect trickle-down diamonds, but maybe. My rose tints look back to the wacky principle of public interest in journalism, where I could defend sources and declarations of conflicts of interest in politics and public office. I think that used to be expected, but back then, did we know the half of it? The facts are out there, but I see them being deleted. It is hard to see the horizon when there is none, and the past is rewritten. I've been locked in my house for many months now, and I read a lot of ancient history. Outrage is defensive in globalized consumerism. It can be manipulated, used for distraction, and we are all victims in the shit show by stepping inside it. But we are born into it. Abolish the shithole. Abolish the shithole. Abolish the shit show. Outside is the distraction. Be careful out there. Remain sports casual, I tell myself, with my giant writer's nose. Only knew I had one when the good times rose, when I was free to roam. But now, I don't care what I look like. That is child's play that can be adapted with filters compared to dreadful mismanagement, false data and lack of logic, where pub toilets are open and campsites aren't, and the bus driver was murdered for people. For people. The bus driver was murdered for people, carrying people. He asked them to wear masks, and some freelancers are more freelance than others. It's all mind games, manipulated by illicit propaganda to the gammonest. Share or be selfish. Living to share becomes traumatizing because outside is evil. And then I remember the spring when the airplanes stopped, when there were no pollutants in the air, and I watched the earth open and the rosebuds and the curl of seeds and beans to light. I bought a fire pit with my Uber savings and felt I was on a beach. It was the rise of the mirror world. Poetry is denied as esoteric in the current era. But quantum will want to disentangle those nuances in the long term because it's far more than those imitating the obvious. Engaging in outside, it gives me tinnitus, and I have gathered enough material of my old outside life in a book I wrote, in another book I wrote, in another book I wrote. But there was one for Red Gallery in 2014 about regeneration, the abuse of it. As one world changes for another, all 23 contributors agreed. We must build a discotheque, a church, a mosque, our worlds despite them. And I speak to Dave Randall about this on a podcast coming soon to Cold Lips. Is that hacienda something digital? Do we own those bricks, or can we all access them? Passive consumerism is a fiction blurring our reality. Lockdown has demanded we all examine our shopping lists. The illusion that our personal lives occur in an alternative echo to that outside exists only when we are without time to contemplate and harmonize. We have to resist the deadened cacophony of hoardings pretending to be sunshine. Getting on a plane out of here is not the solution, not now. Ugly as helicopters hanging above us in London like pesky flies, obnoxious to behave like those who rule. Age becomes destiny, youth culture abolished by the facts of the virus. We take our paths. A conscious audience exists in the world of information warfare. And by claiming a camp, we exist. Therefore, we are. Marketing will have to catch up. But it does it so fast, and I name vices. In the robing room, the window display of mannequin statues demand godliness. An ethical cleanliness is the steer from linguistic imperialism. The only way to behave, I conclude, is as one would wish this world to be. Do as much as you can. Clinging to identity politics on a raft of geolocative perspectives can only unite us in the long term, because there are plenty of us in these ateliers of our own making. Just hold on tight. We are together, however far apart it may appear. This is an essay which I shared in an edit of Cold Lips 05. It was first published with a university that I've worked with. It's called The Identity Spectrum, Power, Politics, and the Movement of Minds. A spectrum is a fairground prostitution of colours, haunting our attention to choose a favourite: cyan, magenta, or gold. I'm a digital existentialist. I post, therefore I am. Scrolling ate my life. AI ate my life. FML, my logic tells me to smash my phone to the ground, but it's so sexy and expensive, and it's the light in the tunnel, or has a torch function. And if we shift from analog to digital, siphoning away the colours of history for dots, zeros, hashtags and labeling, I am screaming that a cultural decimation is occurring. I want to get through Bulgakov, but there's something about being connected that I cannot give up. If data worked, we'd all be Bitcoin billionaires and our marriage dreams of Hinge, Grindr, Tinder, some of those may be realised. But ultimately, we are not yet at the point of full-blown automation or sameness. You only have to try to join a union or pay a parking ticket to know that. Yet, the data we share is a stranglehold, and we're being choked in a social media death march, bullied and dominated by super ego shouting loudest. And I try to avoid sieving through my IRL world of social media stories, but fear my eyes are co-opted by the medium and the owners of my journey are taking the chronic piss out of every effort of my bucket list best life. I've wanted to switch off since I realised I was losing my life to Facebook. So I did something about it. In a somewhat narcissistic move in around 2010, I published a picture of me every day for a year on a blog, wearing a different outfit without buying anything new because I knew it would get more hits than publishing poetry. This led to poetry films in the Tate, which explored the issues of online vanity before selfies, before today I'm wearing, before I lost another 10 years posting nails into my data coffin. And still, I slug it out daily, trying to be heard in a cacophony owned by other people as people tell me I should. It's the most bizarre activity and the very definition of a death trap. And maybe there's something quantum in trying to make life matter. But are we truly listening to much more than the measure of tweeting bird sounds and likes flocking around our social status, canonizing our emotions as reductive cookie-cut emojis for infinity? Are we distracted? Am I distracted? I haven't looked at my phone. Is everybody okay? Am I okay? It's an appropriation of death itself, slaving over a timeline. It's little more than a digital epitaph. How do we want to be remembered? Does this signify righteousness? Online is the bardo, and the fractals of data are cosmically aligned to dark matter. Everything is organic because we created it, and the dreamy equality of a medium that is in its infancy offered everyone the same opportunity, because as mad a fantasy as the crazed diaryism we create imitating each other on TikTok, it's all a wonked out mythomania of constantly sharing how we want to be perceived before our fear of being left behind kicks in. Will be nothing more than a fetishized tech relic, a Roland 303 instead of a Roland app. There is an element of keeping up, and that's linguistically, trend-wise, woke-wise, obsolescence, the black mirror reinforced by the trumpet of our battery draining as we wheel towards a great recycling bin in the sky or down below. Publishing updates with a nihilist sense of preservation means our life is compliant to social media. It's what Ashley Dotty Charles calls outrage in her new book on Bloomsbury. She lays bare the collectivism aspect of bandwagon jumping for social media causes being little more than a reflection of how we want to be received. Generally being part of a distraction politic because trends weigh in an offence to Jamie Oliver's jerk rice in the same index as the murdering of more people than a war memorial each day at the hands of the American police, or the loss of 72 people at Grenfell. The book is funny, it's self-effacing, it's academic enough to please those of us who are so impressed by such things. But it was written before BLM, which somewhat beautifully brought so many people together in a global lockdown. Because we do resonate. BLM proves we all want to make something more permanent than the scroll. It demonstrates that online can lead to genuine demand. But after witnessing Cambridge Analytica's surreptitious illegal abuse of social media, it broke me, and witnessing every check and balance turn a blind eye to fascism and anything other than the sweet smell of profit, I find it difficult to steer clear of the lectures I've given on the history of media, where oligarchs with issues always abuse the masses with propaganda. I'm going to just share sort of 3 media models. The first one's from the early explorers of communication models. They were called Shannon and Weaver. I think it's 1964 this, but I've got references published next to this. Shannon Weaver critiqued the Ouroboros of the publishing and media as a potential minefield where language can be hijacked and metadata can bash out any form of discursive quality by identifying these 3 areas of danger. So there's the encoder, that's the person creating the message. So say they have a certain understanding of the world, that's the understanding that they perpetuate. The next way it can go wrong is with the decoder. That's the person who receives the message. If they are educated in media ownership, they may have a different perspective to someone who is illiterate in social media ownership. The third way that something can go wrong is with the interference and misunderstanding caused by a possible break in transmission. Another communication model from Stuart Hall, who's an amazing character, and Paul de Gay. They came up with this feedback loop model, which was used to suggest 20th century environments are created as feedback loops because of the factors of 5 things. And those 5 things are representation, so what we see, and kind of semiotics, when you look at representational power of you seeing one thing and me seeing another, and a cat looking like a nice cat to some people but a scary evil creature to others. But we kind of have to find this common ground within representation, which leads to stereotypes and kind of grouping, tropes, memeing, culture. The second part in this feedback loop is the identity. That's who we are and who we think we are. And that obviously plays into representation because we get our role models, our imagery from what we see represented around us. The actual style of production, that's dependent upon the factors of creation, i.e. the budget, the camera, the grammar, whatever we're using. So if we see something on TikTok that looks like it's just shot on a kid's phone, it's going to have that kind of vibe to it. If you've got lights on it, it's going to look a little better. If you've done it in a studio, it's pretty impressive, but it might not be the right grammar for that situation. So far we've got representation, identity and production feeding into the feedback loop of what we're creating within our systems, communication systems, and they all play into the greater society. The fourth factor is consumption, how the audience are receiving it. When you're watching it on your phone, Laura Mulvey would say, she's like a feminist film theorist, she'd say if you were watching something massive on a big screen above you, and all those images are constantly women getting married, you will end up being a woman who gets married if you're a woman. If you're looking at something on a smaller screen, however, that's very much in your face, and it's like the way we communicate with each other. So different screens have different effects. Obviously, if you're watching something on 5 screens 5 times, you're not going to consume the message so much. And then, obviously, the other factor that comes into a feedback loop here is how it's regulated. So that depends on kind of how the government decide to control the medium and what information they share about it, who's advertising, how that functions. So that's Stuart Hall's feedback loop model, to suggest that these factors create our wider societies. That's representation, identity, production, consumption, and regulation, and they create who we are. So all these factors are interrelated, and they kind of expand upon Marshall McLuhan's infamous words of the medium being the message. So we're in a system and we're all influencing each other. So we need to always know who's owning our information and who's giving us our information. So maybe there is hope. But, when one of these factors is imbalanced, for example, the government's recent bailout of the existing hegemony of arts in Britain, the problem of art is being unsupported in Britain perpetuates even further. So we get two-tone existences, and we get inequality, and we get weird representational factors that are not quite real. The third sort of and final communication model that I'd like to consider around all of this stuff is panopticism, and that's Michel Foucault. He's the main man here to explain behavioural effects of CCTV society. That was where his research was kind of focusing towards. But a big brother dominance means that we can all live in prison cells without there being bars on them, because an all-seeing eye will dominate our behaviour. So we will just do as we are told if we live in fear enough. So yeah, I'll read some Michel Foucault on that. It kind of feeds into the Stanford experiment, where people naturally assume roles of prison guards dominating others without instruction, and people haven't been given labels, but they automatically assume them due to expectation. It's kind of like religious. It's what Marx says about the dope of the masses. So power does not need to be seen for it to dominate. If you think about the open plan panopticon, the voyeurs of others' labour, we're controlled by such a mirror, and social media is like that too, growing with infinite energy and industry. So, operating with agility and sophistication in a free-form anarcho-neoliberalism suspended by our demographics, our habits, our likes, our dislikes, our behaviour, it's all sold back to us, and our data trails are sold exponentially. So our delineation between what is real and virtual has never been more confused, and it's threatening reductive symbols of cartoon wars and bad hair and explosive name-calling superimpose our timelines, and it becomes our world, and our digital space becomes our real space, and thus our real lives are polluted. Sure, there's great memes to come out of all of this, and I feel I'm discovering artists. I can chat to people, I can connect with almost anyone on the planet. But do we? There are 2 books that I reviewed in DJ Mag that play into this, and one's called The Spotify Teardown, and it's published by MIT Press. And there's another one called The AI Does Not Hate You by Tom Chivers. I reviewed them in DJ, and they're attached to stuff about this online. But I mean, I feel as we come closer to trusting our technologies, not only on our screens, but as an integral part of being woke, and wearables, and just going outside to pay for anything. We're in an inferno of ever-decreasing simulacrums of bland aspirations to carceral capitalism in an all-America hell. Is that real? In this future that James Bridle calls the new dark age, SpaceX and singularity, where we become infinite by uploading our consciousness to the cloud forever, become options associated to the index of money and luxury. But even if we go and live on the moon or planet Primark, logging off from the influence of our surrounds is never easy. The whoring lights of apps, messages so pervasive, the effect of what filmmaker Adam Curtis calls hypernormalization occur in the flattening cacophony of dumbed-down consumerism. And you know where the dumbed-down phrase comes from? It originated in 1930s Hollywood, when studio owners demanded scripts to speak to the illiterate and the lowest educated in various congregations. Fed by the disease of following, liking, rating, commenting. This becomes the index of success and the medicine to echo chambers filled with commercially fueled bot, bump and false tags, from ROI to Newton, dark matter to environmental, karmic to general systems theories, most economic, scientific, industrial, cultural, marketing, spiritual, ethical systems. Those models agree simply. You put in what you get out. And we are feeding our inventions of AI systems, singularity, mind uploading, nanotech, femtotech, life extension, genetic engineering and energy invention with the content we have in the system. Our data becomes their data. And if so much of this data is false, then we have to ask who's programming this heaven of fractals above us or below, destroyed by terrifying language of overlords zombifying herds with their data angle dominance, the language of combative war targets individuals with calls to become a disruptor, a pirate, to express your true self. Controlled by invisible stakeholders, board members avoid responsibility in a management matrix of greed, and technology becomes the parent to our child selves. The traditional estates of power adapt, and where religion was once the primary power, with nobility, press and the bourgeois following, profit is the lord as our consciousness hits the Anthropocene and our religion becomes data. Amid rising temperatures, 65 million displaced people, herd immunity, psychogenocidal leaders, poverty reaching all-time highs, distractions are played out in mass media from territorial leaders and psycho pop star politicians spouting double speak from pantheons of privilege as they gasp to hold on to power. Using dirty tricks on social media, we have to ask, who the fuck is programming this? There's a ripple effect as messages move from individual to friends to families to communities to psychogeographies, and back again and forth again and back and left and right and up and down and left and right, back and forth, and our nearest and dearest are our timelines. They're in our faces. We're connected to those people far away and on our phones. We are who we follow. Real friends and family are replaced by red queens dominating our timeline, inferring behaviour via memes and tropes, and online ad spends wipe out all other media. Trends evolve with every desperado clinging to a wave, virtue signalling likes, wanting to be heard. Is this democracy? Or is it another form of herd immunity where we volunteer our data in a subtle slaughter? Ashley Dotty Charles suggests that as we shift from one cause to the next, it's as functionless as waving a white flag on Parliament Square. And worse, and part of the issue, is the noise we generate and get through to the fug towards any sense of discursive demand. It's all lost as there's profit in cultural signs and profit in appropriation. And social media capital is a thing, with brands as much as influencers jumping on this week's bandwagon to turn their online reality towards an offline perception. Hashtagged intersectionality soon becomes sameness when everything is diluted into private echo chambers in a chaos matrix without a strategy beyond the social currency of being seen to be behaving as trends dictate. So, what does this mean? Marketing. What does it mean? Marketing means getting your idea to the market. It's pretty clever. You know the history of the markets in London, of the salters coming over the bridge, deciding that their salt was better than the other's salt, creating a gang of salt traders who would trade together. They all created their companies within the London trade hall. Different products, different people, groups, trading, outlawing certain traders. Let me tell you some of the shit I've had to listen to in meetings. 1. Brand personalities plus brand legacy equal the creative tools to develop likability. What would Starbucks do? What would Beyonce do? So audience, consumers, friends, family, brand fans make decisions between one brand and another. If we choose one ketchup, one bag, one coffee, one homeless hostel, one refugee camper, lives would be so much easier, and the bigger the brand personality, the more everything. 2. Brand fans, their crew. To consume our products or ideologies, to retweet, to share, to like, to encourage, and spread messages across territories of atomized mass media. Because the mass media doesn't exist so much now, so we can just go straight to market. We can just get the ideas straight to our consumer with our brand fans. 3. The 4 corners of marketing. To differentiate, to persuade, to enforce, and to re-inform. Goebbels did it best. 4. Using the trinity of image plus identity, that equals reputation. So, reputation is the cumulative effect of what people think of you. To have a power, a brand, rule, a dominant ideology, you need to control the image and the identity. So 5, if you make all of that information reliant upon the golden marketing triptych of segment your audience, target your audience, and position your product like a gun, like a sniper, you will get the audience. You will get them with your price. You will get them with your perception, and you will encourage a need state on every single one of them, using divide and conquer techniques to delineate your products from the competition in order to perpetuate financial wealth control and the racket of neoliberal privatization through demographic engineering. So what is audience? It is keywords, it is the metadata we share with the system, and there are 3 groups here. There are the workers. These are the people who facilitate conversations for corporations. They are complicit in a fear that venting discontent publicly will out them from the system. If they are taxpayers, how can they have a voice? So we tacitly comply, propagating rather than challenging. Do you work for the system? Do you work for the system? Debt delinquency facilitates the medium. Debt delinquency facilitates the medium. 2. There's a minority of independent voices. They're often writers, intellectuals, occasional politicians, musicians, artists, and these people trade on having enough freedom from the system to legitimately challenging it, as they have nothing to lose. So the conclusion with that is you need to follow those people, but you need to be aware that as part of the financial system, the motivation of messaging is frequently to sell something themselves, raise awareness, rather than engage with those around them. The cultivation of a brand fans, of a brand crew is a subtle provocateur. Those that have enough time, money, shelter, warmth, clothing, security, they conduct themselves with little to lose, and those are the only people to trust. Because the third part of audience, the co-opted public figures who frequently live in hyperbolic states of super-ego aspiration to fulfill some crazed PR manifestation of lifestyle via an implicit cooperation with the fangs of Facebook, the Amazon, the Netflix, the Google, the companies such as Spotify. Challenge any cunt who's tacitly implicit with people who are robbing the poor. When the audience is also the fangs and billionaires and corporate supergroups such as Unilever, Procter & Gamble, PepsiCo, Kering, LVMH, with more power than individuals to monitor and operate and infiltrate other groups in the business of business. Innocuous and invisible wars are played out. Oh, the sweet smell of the bandwagon. They have to know how we think, what triggers, what motivates us. Our voices are pitted against beneficiaries of dominance from the pre-digital days of marketing, so we cannot win against their largest resource for content creation. Lobbyists are selling us to governments, regulators are at the whim of politicians who exhibit a mad digital mythomania or pseudologica fantastica, where we're inside a system. It becomes our responsibility to separate brand personality in a minefield of false information. Audience is homogenized by the medium, so battles itself out for dominance in various modes of attention seeking. Often compared to Las Vegas, how easy is it for us to live there without at least once putting a few bucks in a slot, which could change your life? So do we leave the system? Can we? As a creator, I see a product merging with the documentation of the process, and the process becomes a lifestyle and thus a product in itself. And this dilution within a sophisticated ballet against the individual means affordable, sexy creativity. And being woke becomes the deafening noise of status updates everywhere, subtly manipulating us with every published everything. So we have to exercise severe self-control. The audience finds itself attacked, targeted, defined by a series of demographic and cultural signifiers, and these define the brand personalities too. It's reactive, it's emotional, it's a sensitive system. There's the global labels of individualism of who we are, whether we're a friend, lover, family, fan, sex, sexuality, appearance, age, hobbies, passions, works. They click with the geolocational experiences, our cultural upbringing, a childhood in Kansas being non-identical to one in Johannesburg, for example. And these are truly personal elements that create our very psyche. And I separate these demographical identifiers because the territorial reign of corporate colonies where distribution into markets is governed by monolithic organisational blocks such as North America, EMEA, OPEC, BRIC, etc. So globalised identities thus are at odds with corporations. So the interplay of globalisation and localisation is actually just a device. So when global labels and geolocational experience combine, behavioural representations of actions present themselves on an identity spectrum, e.g. racism, sexism, ageism. Everyday experiences dependent on factors surrounding geolocation and surrounding societal behaviour will dictate our interaction with the wider issues. So digital identity politics become distraction politics, where cultural identifiers are our only weapon against the hegemony. So there's an intelligent fascism benefiting from exploiting decentralised uniformity, where our sense of self is curated from an environment. So we need to be guided by educators. We need to self-educate. Ethical narratives of stories. We need to think through religion, literature, media, memes, tropes, and heavily marketed brand personalities and think pieces, because our woke endocrines guide us through our urban and digital lives, more concerned about our behaviour than the greater issue of debt being the largest delinquency on the planet. A mycelium strangles ideas outside of it, and the only solution is to either totally destroy the financial system or demand corporate social responsibility to support communities where government fails the individual. If genuine authenticity to corporate social responsibility was reflected in briefs to PR and advertising, the world could change. Needs-based understanding of what's required, our money that we're putting into a system, gives it back out. But currently India and Mauritius are the only two countries with mandated CSR contributions, and that's only 2%. And I believe it should be kind of a lot of the profit, over 50%. But they're all fiddling hedge fund losses. So it's very difficult to work out how we enforce them to take responsibility. We could stop shopping on Amazon, we could stop using Spotify, but unless the wealth is redistributed to us as a universal basic income, we could demand that we became shareholders for contributions to different platforms. Data could solve our problems for that if we were the owners of our data rather than others profiting from it. We need solutions. Governments need to drop short-term goals of personal crony gain for a Maslow-based joined-up needs assessment program where CSR does not make anything more than Instagrammable content, because the triple line of people, planet, profit needs to be configured with the ecosystem of the planet before this toxic communication loop strangles all of us. In media theory, it always comes back to responsibility. So we need a manifesto for citizenship because we need a dope for the masses. A recent Oxfam report cited 26 evil bogeymen in the world. Women, however they wish to be identified. At minimum, these people could use cultures of ill-funded research and war against competitors in a self-protection racket policed by international quangos operating in a mirage of debt. And we must be able to quantify our social media capital to mean something, as per Shoshana Zuboff's Surveillance Capitalism. The question is whether we can reach a tipping point where impartiality is applied to data. Do we own it? Can we control it? Can we use our data to replace self-interested government that labels itself around old ideas of left and right, democratic or republican? Because the free-falling lack of autonomy in capitalism leaves us with no option but to comply. We have to be able to claim it back. How do we create an index of well-being and sustainability within a legacy of Thatcher and Reagan's destruction of society? I'd suggest a blockchain division of minerals, food, water, with true social automation, a side universal basic income, and this would encourage a more artisanal, high-esteem existence for all of us. And I would also propose an ethical jury service style global parliament operating away from the influence and maelstrom of politicians, a toothless UN, weapons trading, and organisations such as WTO or the IMF. But why would those with power give it up? If our online data was used as a social fund in a similar manner to CSR, technology inequality could be reconstructed for a fair future. Our current state works for unimaginative liars, and our technology hasn't threatened to kill us yet, but it is mauling, it is slavering, and it is threatening to bite us like a malnourished pet of Pavlov if we continue to program it with war and allow profiteering communication networks to push back hardware powered by archaic energy systems, killing the environment, perpetuating the black market, wars and reserves, creating the mirage of scarcity. Structured globalization pleases 83% of the shareholders who own 1% of the global wealth. They rarely benefit the communities they operate in. In the miasma of proxy austerity and theatre wars, arms sales mean nationalism, and nationalism means fascism. And the gammonist rejoice, unknowing they are fodder. So strategy is essential. The global brain requires education, and we still program it. So social media is the media now, and we are all the media. So we own the right to interrogate in this circus of labels. If we want to be riled, how are we going to express it? Nothing changes if we kick back. Freedom and the offer of equality through expression on social media may be as false as the validation via populism that social media index encourages, where likability grows exponentially, mirroring capitalism with a Kardashian glam facade mimicked by back-end black market opportunities to buy fans and likes. Do we accept that? Do we accept our place? Because we are together and we are undermined, and ethics are the only universal standard. And what do we want to have written upon our digital epitaphs?